Hey guys, be twice here. Today is Sunday, July 18th. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I'm going to be doing a couple requests. As always, I can't get to everything. I try to do as much as I can. These are probably going to be the last requests I get to this weekend. So we're going to start off by looking at Workhorse because it's an EV. I generally don't cover Workhorse. I'm not in Workhorse. Um, I try to only usually get into companies I like long term. I don't know enough about Workhorse to say whether or not I do like it long term, and that's why I simply don't trade it. In terms of EV stocks, I do like NEO and I like CCIV and I like Tesla long term. The other ones I just don't know enough about, but I know Workhorse is a popular one, so I figured I'd look at this one since it was requested. Um, so what I'm seeing from the all-time lows, at least I think it's the all-time lows, but from back here at the $7 range, I am seeing an impulse to the upside. So that's a good sign, right? It looks like we have a clear five-wave move up. Um, Up for a one. Uh, Mind you, this did get pumped at one point because it was short squeezed and it was a Wall Street bet stock. And a lot of times these can be super manipulated. What we're seeing with Wish and all these other companies. So you want to be mindful about that too. And this is another reason why I simply am not in it, just because I feel like there's just too many people manipulating and there's too many volatile swings left and right. So with that being said, either way, it does look good for an impulse to the upside. I put a question mark because whether or not this is a true one or if we're just continuing our downward slide and we're going to break this $7 range is to be determined. But I am seeing that as a potential one. I do think I like that as being a one. Um, so now, with that being said, I'm seeing a three-wave move down and for a C. So we had a zigzag A, B, C. So that gives us a W because we're in a complex correction. Then we had an A, B, C to the upside, which is our X. And now we're coming down looking for our Y. So I didn't draw it here, but there should be a red Y here. Because normally when you go down for for what I'm calling my red Y, what you end up having in between is you have another WXY move to take you there. So what I'm seeing is that we had a zigzag down for W, we popped it for an X, and that we're moving lower for our Y. So let's talk about why I like the level of like 940 between 973 and 940 as my low. Um, so when you want to find your wave Y price target and you take an extension off of your W to your X, a lot of times it's somewhere between the point or the 61.8 to the 161.8. So it's a huge window. So what I've drawn two levels on here. I've drawn the 123.6 to show you that we've already broken that. We've already broken the 123.6, which means we're likely going all the way down to the 161.8, which happens to be 975. Also, when you take your retracement for your entire wave one move up, a lot of times the 61.8 or the 76.4 ends up being your bottom. If you look at this, the 76.4 it ends up being exactly the same as the 161.8 extension. With that being said, that's probably the best area for it to find a bounce, which is why I drew the line to that area. The other way you can find your target is you would take your extension off of this WXY and you'd look for the 61.8, the 100, the 161.8. So when you do this extension, it was more likely to be the 61.8, not the 100, because the 100 is going to take you below invalidation anyway, so that doesn't make any sense. Um, so with that being said, I like this level as the best spot to find a bounce to the upside. Whether that bounce to the upside is going to be a three swing, meaning it's not going to go all the way past the top of one. It's going to three swing up somewhere in here and then ultimately fail again. Maybe it only goes up to 11 or 12 and then fails again and it's coming down for a Z. That's entirely possible. It may just do a three-wave move up to like 11 or 12 if it does that move at all, and then it'll ultimately come lower and then maybe it'll end somewhere around 8. I mean, that's to be determined. But either way, if I was going to get into the stock, I would not add anything at all until we cross down to this 973 range. Maybe around $10 a share, I'd add a little position just to see if I can't catch a three swing up. But I ultimately would take profits quickly because I think it's going to take some really good news at this earnings or whatever that, yeah, at earnings to really send this guy. So, but that's workhorse for you. All right, so let's look at Cat. Another person requested Cat, so let's look at Caterpillar. I do really like the industrials and what they're doing. I didn't bother counting everything up to this point. I only bothered counting going up to where we saw these highs this year. What I'm seeing is that we had a five-wave move up for a one, we pulled back for a two, and that we had another five-wave move up to give us a wave three. And right now we're looking for our wave four. So now let's jump into the hourly so we can get a better look at this thing. So right now we're looking for our wave four bottom. there was a huge call premium coming in Friday across the tape, and it made me look at this name. But I'm already long industrials. I'm long XLI, and that's 4% cat. So with that being said, I didn't add anything because there's no reason for me to. But yeah, I think it was like $52 million in calls. So somebody's betting big money that this already hit bottom. The reason behind that is we're looking for our wave 4 bottom, and we've already tagged the 38.2. That's the most common spot, and that's like the best spot to find a dip buy on wave 4s. Also, as you can see, this is pretty much like the golden dip right here. If this truly is a wave one, because we had an ABC move to the downside, so it could be a complex correction, and if it is, we're going to head lower. If it's not, then what that means is we've already popped up for a one, we've pulled back for a two, and we're pretty much as low as we can possibly go for a two. So if we've already gone up for one and we're in the process of a two, this is a great dip buy spot because from there we could go sending this thing all the way back up to 233. Ultimately, we pull back to 220 from there, and then we'll be heading up to 240 for our wave 5 price target. Um, so that's if the bottom's in. So if this bottom's in and we don't head below this red dot line. So if we do head below this red dot line right around this 205 range, that means that's invalidation that this was not bottom and that this is a W, this is an X, and that we're going down for Y. If the bottom's not already set, this thing could go as low as 194 before it finds true bottom. So I do ultimately think that Caterpillar is a good look to go long term, and I do think there's a relatively good shot that this bottom was already in. But if it's not, and it does come down here, I definitely would be a buyer in the mid 190s, absolutely, because I do think from there we should launch. But I don't think that the market's going into a crash. And with that being said, I think that it's a good possibility right here that this is a two. All right, so there's Caterpillar for you. All right, so one other one I want to look at is Nike. Nike's just been on these face ripping rally off of earnings. And it does look interesting for a position soon. So what I'm seeing is that we're in the process of a wave three. So we popped up for one, pulled back for a two. We had a one, a two. So 1, 2, 1, 2 nest. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we've topped now. I'm saying that this is the top of wave three. We're not going to go any higher, and that we're in the process of our swing down. I don't like us having already found a low because wave fours have to pass the 14.6. We haven't checked that box. This thing has to go below 157.52 for me to take a trade. I put an alert here for when it crosses below because I don't know with the strength we're seeing from Nike if it's going to go too much lower than that. But I do like between 157 to 154 as a good dip buy spot, looking for a price target of 171 in the near future. These guys blew earnings away to the point of where if the market does give us a blessing and it does head lower because of market conditions, the lower you can get in, the better. But ultimately, you can get some calls on this guy for a few months out for probably still pretty cheap. Um, at least spreads would probably be pretty cheap, especially at this 171 range. I don't know if it's ever hit 171. So with that being said, I've created an alert. I'm going to be watching this. I think Nike is a great dip buy if it does head lower. I wouldn't touch it yet. It needs to be below 157. Man, if I could get in around 155, that would be a blessing. So, all right, guys, if you like these videos, go ahead and hit a like and subscribe.